something we always do, and I like to do with you guys as well, is to briefly share with us your personal journeys that prepared and brought you into our profession, both on the educational side and or a mentored side. And it doesn't. We don't need the whole almanac, but some high points.
Well, in my case, I was sort of in high school torn between art, music, and
Closer.
I was torn between whether I was more interested in art or music, and then I came up with this idea that if I became a theatrical set designer and did like musicals and operas, that it would combine the two. And I did theater. I did theater for about 12 years, and when I was around 30, I realized I was poor, and then I sort of, changed.
A little closer.
So I did theater for about 12 years, and then I sort of shifted over when I realized that it wasn't so lucrative.
So for me, I went to school for interior design, wanting to be an interior designer. And then when I got out of school, the first job that I got was actually working in a prop house in New York City called Eclectic Encore. And that's where I met designers and decorators and stylists, and just thought that that's where my career path would be, that I wanted to be a decorator.
Wow, that's great. Relationships, it's all about relationships. So I have a few statistics that I've been told. 295 dress sets in 108 shooting days, is that accurate?
Yes, and 28 built sets.
Oh, God. So how do you even begin to break that down? I mean, how do you, Regina, can you talk a little bit about your crew and the organization that it takes to get all of the infinite small items that, I mean, the details are amazing, so how do they all get to the right place?
So I think I kind of work with a small crew. I have 3 assistant decorators, and I had probably 2 shoppers that would come in and rotate. For me, I like keeping it small because even though the project was so huge, I like to really have my hands in it all. And having a small crew and just having them basically concentrate on certain elements or certain sets, it gives me more time to look over things and to show Bob what we're thinking and how we're thinking about doing it. So as far as like buyers and shoppers, it's very contained. Now, the lead man, we had at some point anywhere between like 50 to 85 set dressers a day because of the sets that we were dressing. So that was just a huge crew. And even though it was so big, we had, we got to know everyone on a personal level, and it just worked really well.
Yeah. This is for both of you, but what about the work at the very beginning gives you the most joy and how do you proceed with your research and your collaboration, in your case, with Mr. Scorsese, who's done a few films before?
It's funny because in the case of, is this on? In the case of this project, I was a little bit more familiar with the turf than he was because...
He's never done a mob picture before?
It wasn't the mob aspect. It was that a lot of it took place in Philadelphia. I was born in Philadelphia. I wasn't raised there, but my family was from Philadelphia. And there were elements that took place in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and I had relatives who lived there. And we had the Latin Casino, and it was down like a mile down the road from where my aunt lived in South Jersey. So I was pretty familiar with the territory. So this was one of the rare cases where the first thing I did was grab the family photo albums. And one of the first things I looked at was my parents' wedding album, and I remember a picture of my mom on the stoop of the house in South Philadelphia in her wedding dress, and I always remembered that they painted the numbers on the diagonal on the brick, and what the you could see in this one picture what the cars were like, what the window treatments were like, what the awnings looked like, and so the first place I started on this show was like just the family album.
And that was a personal experience before you shared it with the rest of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I shared it with Marty pretty soon, and but this one really came into focus pretty clearly, like right away for me. Sometimes you you know, you're looking and you're trying to find, sometimes we say, you know, the Rosetta Stone, or find that one piece of research that unlocks it. And in this case, it was really, it came unlocked.
So the two of you were curled up on the floor looking at the albums together? Or?
You know, I had a lot of prep time on this because there was so much location scouting to do. So I'd been putting files in Dropbox folders for like 2 or 3 months before, you know, Regina or Laura Ballinger Gardner, our art director, started. So because we scouted for 3 months before the rest of the production got up and running, because there was just so much scouting to do.
Right. And that was a small group that was doing the scouting and that exchange back and forth?
There were just a couple scouts, and then Kip Myers and myself were just in the car all day, every day, driving around, you know, trying to find one more period gas station to be. Yeah, you can't really find the period gas stations. You find what you're going to make into a period gas station.
You would look for bones, a lot of bones.
Yeah.
Regina, what gives you the most pleasure in the pre-production period? How do you approach getting your head together?
I really like going over things with Bob, and we usually do that late at night when everyone else has left the office. Bob has a little pet name for where we go. We go into his room, and he calls it the
Selectron chamber.
the Selectron chamber.
Let's spend some time in the Selectron chamber.
So it's at those times where we can sit down, even though it might be 7, 8 o'clock at night, and we can really look at fabrics and look at set dressing and just kind of bring it all together. And I see what he likes and what he responds to, and you know, it's really like our alone time where we just kind of play off of that, and everything just kind of happens from there.
We treat it sort of like auditioning, like the fabrics, and then we'll put them aside, and then when we eliminate something, we say thank you for coming, and put it on to the side.
That's great. Do you have, of all of these 295 sets, is there a favorite that each of you has?
It's funny, I was saying to Rod just a little while ago that for all of the historical accuracy and all of the, we have to match Umberto's and we have to match this, the ones that I like best were the ones that we made up because the Villa de Roma is not really based on the historical place because it wasn't cinematic, it really wasn't very interesting. So it was sort of a compendium of old New York Italian restaurants. You probably know the names if I started rattling them off. And the other one was the Latin Casino, because again, it was a pretty plain kind of banquet hall sort of place. And so we did our own version of it, starting with the location, which had this big, you know, curved ceiling. So my favorites were the ones that we made up.
Reality can often be disappointing.
Yeah.
Well, it can be, you know, we definitely...
That's why they hire you.
What about you, Regina?
I'm going to say my favorite set was probably the barbershop. It was something that really wasn't supposed to happen. And I think we threw that together pretty quickly, and I was really happy with the way it came out.
I have to ask one more question of Regina. Having worked with Rodrigo Prieto before, who is also the Oscar-nominated cinematographer for The Irishman, how specific was he with lighting?
I don't really think he was so specific with certain things. I mean, we would go to him and show him stuff, and for the camera test, it was all...
I think you might be even forgetting a little bit because
Maybe I am.
You know, it's in the digital
That's
age.
a recovery process.
Yeah, you forget,
It's childbirth, yeah. In the digital age, you know, everybody knows we're so much more responsible for actually lighting the sets now. Yeah. And so it's like, do you want an up light? Do you want a down light? Do you want it down? What kind of light do you want? So it's not just what the fixture looks like. And, you know, you might not remember, but there were a number of times when he said, do you have something that will spread? Here, do you have something that will do this? And, you know, so it's not just what it looks like. It's, you know,
Well, we did always have, we had like tables of lamps. I did forget that, and lampshades, different lampshades. But yeah, I guess you forget. Right. But he always said it. He did it in a nice way. Oh, it was always in a very nice way.
He's very sweet. Yes.
But you are, especially in the digital age, we light the sets now more than, but we don't get that money.
Well, on my last job, I even said I wanted credit for lighting because that was it. Yeah, I definitely wanted it. Yeah, I did.
My last question is, we have a large group, and this is everyone's going to get this question, so you can be thinking about your answers now if you want. We have a large group of admirers out there who would like to follow in your footsteps. And any thoughts, suggestions you would have for someone who wants to go into our end of the business, other than run and don't do that? That's not an answer, by the way.
I think it's to sort of familiarize yourself with as many parts of the process as possible. I mean, it's good to different. Everybody wants to start at the top, you know, and like Regina started in one of the prop houses, and you know, she learned really from the ground up. And you know, I think the more you can do that, the better.
Yeah, I have to agree with Bob. No matter what department you want to be in, set deck or whatever, I think you have to start basically at the bottom and learn every piece of the puzzle. Like I was a set dresser, I was a buyer, I was a shop girl, I was all these different things. I think even if you want to be a PA, every job counts, I think, and every single thing we do works together as one. And whatever you plan on doing, just doing it well, because someone will definitely notice and recommend you for like the next step and the next step. But I definitely suggest that don't just go in and say, oh, I just want to be a decorator, and think, you know, maybe you will do great. But I think knowing all the pieces and knowing what every other department does, as far as like the gaffer and the camera operator, every single person, you'll just find yourself with a lot more knowledge and being better at what you do.
You have people who come to you all the time and say, I want to be a decorator because I really like shopping.
Yeah,
You know?
always.
All the
And
time.
it's not only about the shopping, as anyone can tell you, it's not.
And just a follow up to that, do either of you think, or neither of you actually studied film in your college? You pursued other directions?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you were a theater.
I was a theater. I went to art school because I thought that I would go to art school and then I would have to go to grad school, and I sort of started working early and never did the grad school part.
Yeah, it was wise.
Right.
Regina?
I didn't study film, no, but I always loved film.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not something I studied.
But everything you do in life, you apply to what you do, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Next will be Jojo Rabbit.